Hello, creative spirits. Welcome to another episode of the show, or welcome to the show for the first time. I'm so glad you're here. Today, I want to talk about capitalism and creativity. Very big topic, something I think about a lot, something I probably think about too much. And I'm going to share five big concepts, five big truths to me that I see around this topic. I'll kind of break those down and hopefully make it helpful and allow you to maybe shift something in your own perspective as a creative spirit trying to be creative in this capitalist world in 2025. If you haven't already noticed, capitalism does impact our creativity in big ways. I'll get into that. But first, I just want to invite you to two wonderful things that are happening this week and next week. So, if you are listening to this episode in the day or two after it publishes, on Wednesday, May 7th, I'm hosting my favorite tarot teacher, Christopher Marmolejo, for a workshop on the history of tarot. And Christopher is the author of Red Tarot, which is a decolonial guide to divinatory, let's see, a decolonial guide to liberatory divination. That book came out last year. It's a really groundbreaking work that brings in indigenous roots, indigenous thinking, indigenous wisdom, decolonial theory, queer theory, feminist theory, and also just really beautiful and striking writing, along with a perspective that really no one else is bringing to the table in this way right now. So I've learned so much working with Christopher the last couple of years. I was like 6 years into practicing tarot when I started studying with them, and it's really opened a new portal for me. They're an amazing teacher. They left a teaching career to basically start their own tarot school, and most of their classes are usually a little longer term. They're in a series. So, this is a really beautiful opportunity to just work with them one time and kind of ask some questions or just be in their classroom space, which always feels really wonderful and fun and interesting to me and really rich as well. And so Christopher is going to be talking about the origins of tarot, the evolution of tarot. Christopher has also traveled to tarot archives and museums, partly because they've been invited to speak and give lectures and classes at some of these historical institutes in Canada and elsewhere. So they're also going to share some stories from those visits where they've gotten to see tarot decks that you and I will probably never see in our lifetime, unfortunately. And Christopher will also talk about the evolution of a few specific cards, like how those archetypes have been portrayed in the past and how they've evolved to the archetypes we know now. So I'm so excited to host Christopher. I hope you will come to this workshop and dig into the roots of tarot with us. Again, it's May 7th, Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central Time. And it's $33 just for the workshop. Or if you're a member of the Creative Magic Collective, this is your monthly workshop. These are the kinds of things you get every month in the collective. And then last thing, on Wednesday, May 13th, a week later, I'm going to host a workshop on creative wholeness, which will be very much connected to what I'm going to talk about today with capitalism and creativity. So I'll be showing and sharing a framework for how I see creative spirits finding their way to a creative life, a life that feels infused with creativity, that matches your creative impulses and desires and aspirations. And yeah, there's lots of things that get in our way without us even noticing it. So I'm going to shine the light on some of that and give you a framework and a map for how to think about things you can adjust in your creative practice. This one is just $17. If you're in the collective, you get it free because you just get to go to all the classes at no cost, no additional cost. And yeah, it's just 17 for everyone else. Both of the workshops are on my events page, which is linked in the show notes. Yeah, and I'd love to maybe meet some of y'all listeners out there that I haven't met or heard from. Okay, that's my plug. Let's get into the topic, capitalism and creativity. So, at this point in 2025, capitalism is about 500 years old. So it's had some time to really work its way into our lives, to create lots of reinforcing, self reinforcing systems. And it's just completely rooted in our way of life. It's kind of like the invasive species that took over the whole landscape and just like reconfigured everything. Obviously, gradually over time, but here in 2025, we are living in this very modern, digitized, ultra like evolved form of capitalism. And I say that because like we're always being advertised to. There's more billionaires, there's even like trillionaires. And yeah, it's just really exploded. This is what we live in. So, capitalism, I do have a problem with the way that we experience capitalism in America and probably in other Western nations as well. But I have a problem with that. But capitalism in itself, as an idea, as a concept, as a construct, is actually, has a lot of potential. Because of capitalism, I can have a business like I do. I can have this weird creative tarot business. It's hard. It's not like easy to have it, but it is possible. So capitalism is a free market theory where, you know, you develop something that you think people need and you sell it. You use that money to support yourself and buy the things that you need. But the market theoretically will decide what's necessary, what's helpful to commerce, what people find valuable, all of that. So, in that kind of neutral way, it creates a lot of opportunity. Not everyone is going to succeed in their work or their labors or their businesses necessarily every time, but it allows for experimentation and it allows for a lot of innovation. So that's great. But the way that we experience capitalism now is not so neutral. I'm sure you feel the pressure constantly. So, 5 things about this. Number one is that capitalism, as we know it, and maybe even in the theory of it, incentivizes competition. It creates competition. There's going to be competition among humans anyway. We're animals. All animals compete for resources and space and mates and all of that. So we have competition in our biology. But in capitalism, it really infiltrates the way we think about almost everything. Even if we're not explicitly thinking about, I'm competing for this, I really want this, and I want them not to have it, but I want to have it. Even if we're not explicitly thinking that, there's some inherent drive within us that capitalism reinforces that makes us think if I don't get that instead of them, then I'm going to be like in scarcity, in poverty. There's a lot of fear that if we're not winning in the competition, we're going to be shut out. We're going to really, really struggle. So in capitalism that we know, there's a competition for dollars, right? Capitalism operates on currency. We don't have a barter economy anymore. Some people do trades, but mostly you need money. You can't pay your rent in a trade, right? So within the marketplace, every business is competing for the existing dollars of the people out there. How are those people going to spend their money? And it's up to the business, the operation to try and attract the dollars, the limited number of dollars that people are going to spend in any given place. So we're competing for the dollars, we're competing for space, If you have a business that produces, or if you have employees, you need space. You need a storefront. If you are doing retail, you need space to be visible somewhere. So there's a competition in space as well, either like being able to afford a property or rent a property, being able to like create a little digital universe that people can find that is visible enough on the map of the endless, infinite digital internetscape, right? And then we're competing for visibility, to be noticed, to get our message out, to attract people to our thing so that money can be made. Or we're competing for visibility in our workspaces so we can get a promotion, so we can earn more money, so we can have a bigger home, we can have more space. And then we're also competing in terms of our identity, which is wrapped up in both like survival and also concepts of success. Like another way we're competing is by trying to like visibly look like we're doing well, or to actually do well according to the class system that capitalism creates. So I imagine that classism is like even older than capitalism. Maybe they're linked, I'm not sure, but I kind of doubt it. I imagine there's always been people who hoard resources and always been people who have to scrape by or who have been outcast and therefore have less access to what they need. That being said, we're now competing in all of these entangled ways for the dollars, for the visibility, for the space, for the identity. And capitalism reinforces this idea that, like, if you don't get it, someone else will. So you better hurry and you better bust your ass because it's like the stakes are high. We always feel like the stakes are high when we're in a competition, even if we're not like fully aware that we're in one. This means that this competitive mindset is also infiltrating our creativity. So, creativity, I talked about in the last episode or a couple episodes back, creativity is an energy. I think it's a spiritual energy. It's not really interested in our capitalist framework. Like, that's not how creativity would do things. That's not how it naturally flows. That's not how it feels self reinforced or supported. But we try to squeeze creativity through all the filters that capitalism gives us, including this notion of competition. So even if unconsciously we're aware that we're competing for other people, like if you're a writer, you're always very aware. This is true of musicians, for filmmakers. Like there's limited dollars, there's limited people to pick up your project. Like at the top of the heap where the gatekeepers are, there's way fewer people. All of those institutions have been mostly consolidated. There are fewer independent outlets that could bring your creative product to the marketplace. So, you know, there's a lot of writers out there, and they're all competing with you to be picked up by the limited number of publishers. And so that's going to hover over you because it feels like the make or break thing. If no one picks your project, then it was all for nothing, is what we kind of tell ourselves, right? That's reinforced by the whole capitalist system of it all. So, really, everything we're part of, schools, nonprofits, higher education institutions, and of course, businesses are all touched by capitalism. They are all reinforcing the system, even if they appear to be like antidotes to the system. They're all self reinforcing. So, what we feel in competition over here is definitely going to recreate itself in the marketplace, in the creative marketplace, right? So this means that we're always looking at what other people are creating. We're trying to follow trends. We're trying to see what's a bestseller. We're trying to see what's a blockbuster. And as these creative conglomerates like become larger and larger and need and want to make more money so they can become bigger and more successful, they're chasing kind of like the every person. They're trying to have mass appeal. And so the projects they choose and the projects they fund are often projects that they think are going to have mass appeal or have had mass appeal in the past. So as you get higher up in the like bringing things to the creative marketplace in the traditional chains, there's less space for creative for different forms of expression, different presentations of genres, more experimental work, more niche kinds of stories or stories that haven't been told before. So we're kind of in the competition soup. We're also chasing the mass appeal, even though we have something very specific that we want to like bring forward. So this means we're really struggling to create authentically. We're trying to both like think about the marketplace and think about the soul of the art or what the art really wants to become. And they're very different things. So then we're always in this tension between will people like it? Will someone accept it? Will someone anoint it? To be elevated to more audiences, or will it languish in a file somewhere on my computer? Um, so we're trying to like walk this line and do both things, like honor the project and honor the marketplace, but they're not that compatible. And then we start imitating other people. And imitation is like an important part of the creative process. It's not wrong. That's how we develop our skills and try new things and see what works and what we like and what we don't like. Kind of trying on different things that other creators have made. But if, again, we're in this like narrowing funnel of what's palatable to the masses, then we're always looking around trying to kind of like follow or do the thing that the other person is doing because we've seen that for them, it led to success. So it becomes really hard to be like, oh, that person is giving me a good idea. That person is inspiring me to try this thing versus, oh, I see them succeeding. Let me try this thing so I too can have success, which is not, again, the point of creativity. This creates pain. I talk to a lot of clients who struggle with this. Like, it's really not that fun to sit down and do their creative work because as soon as they do, they're in that battle between how do I contort myself and how do I stay authentic? There's a lot of energy you have to put into trying to navigate that because the decision on the other end is totally random. Like you can't predict what's going to like strike that balance. So you're constantly negotiating that, even if it's not, again, top of mind, it's happening inside you. So a lot of my clients are like angsty in their creativity, and that's a big reason. And this is also, this whole dichotomy, this sort of competition at the top and in general makes it really painful for writers in particular, but I imagine also filmmakers, television writers. It makes it really painful to go from the actual creative process to the realization and distribution process. Like the creative process can be really exploratory and discovery, filled with discovery. It can be fun, it can be interesting, it's unfolding for you. There's a lot to like wrestle with. You have some challenges that are interesting to you. And so that's a really generative, powerful experience to have when you're in the mode of creation. But then when you stop, when you're done, when you're ready to share, and if you're going traditional routes, you have to like go shop it around. You have to go wait for someone, sometimes for a very long time, to like say, yes, let's do this project. You have to go sell, right? You have to go like pitch it to agents or pitch it to editors. And so it's a completely different set of skills and experiences once you get into the kind of like more acute version of the competition. So there's another pain point there when writers are trying to move something they've worked really hard on into the space where audiences can enjoy it. Um, Okay, that's number one. How capitalism exacerbates, reinforces, and perpetuates competition, which leaches into our creativity. Number two is that our self-expression becomes commodified. So creativity, excuse me, creativity is inherently about self-expression. That's what it is. I mean, it's not only that, but it's so much of it is that you're creating something that only you would create. It is an expression, an extension of yourself, an extension of your point of view, the way that you see the world, the way that you wrestle with life, the way that you celebrate life, the way that you grapple with the world that you live in. All of that is deeply personal. And some of that, depending on the project and your interests or what you need to focus on creatively at any given time, some of that is going to come through the creation. There is no objective creativity. There is no that's what AI does. Like it just takes the old stuff and mashes it together for us and tries to like give you the formula that you asked for. But for us, for humans creating, like we're always in this infusion process of like bringing little parts of ourselves into the creative project. So you might be expressing yourself through something that has to do with your family history or your family lineage. You might be expressing yourself around an issue that you really care about. Like your art might have something to do with social justice or environmental justice, even if it's not like screaming that that's what it's about. Your art might be an expression of a particular painful experience that you navigated and survived in life. Like a lot of people are in their lifetime will just make stories that are about the same kind of feeling, the same kind of pain, the same kind of difficulty. And that's a writer creating art that helps them understand themselves, process this experience, see it in new ways, et cetera, et cetera. So creativity is self-expressive. And in capitalism, self-expression is either rewarded or it's suppressed and silenced. So yes, there are in-betweens, but as we were discussing, as like giant creative enterprises dominate the marketplace and try to make money appealing to the most like wide audience, um, we see that some people get to make those expressions and other people's expressions really kind of fall to the bottom and are hard to hear, or they're dismissed because it's too strange, it's too unusual, it's too confronting. And so capitalism, which is also now at this point like built around consumerism and incentivizing us to buy things by manipulating our emotions usually, now that that's happening and everything is built around consumerism, certain voices and things are elevated to help motivate us to continue to consume. This is why we have insane beauty standards. So women are always buying makeup or healthcare, skincare products, or spending so much money trying to look young because capitalism is always like it can always motivate us based on the insecurities it creates inside of us. It can always motivate us to buy something so that we can have this feeling that we're succeeding or we are fitting in or we are appealing, that our visibility is palatable rather than being dismissed. So this will infiltrate our creativity, of course. And if it's running in the back of our minds or at the front of our minds, it's kind of coming back to that same competitive thing. Will my self expression be elevated? Will it be handled with care? Will it be honored in some way? Will it have meaning for other people? Will it have impact? Or will my self expression be mocked, rejected, shut aside, all of that stuff, or like barely even heard? So we're in this really vulnerable place where the emotions are very tender often, and we're bringing that into our art, into a capitalist world that's really focused on profitability, right? So money and profitability is not the road to tending our emotions, right? Capitalism, consumerism wants to manipulate our feelings or keep us numb, rather than bring like our own interesting expressions to the table, because oftentimes they would be critical of the way things are. Someone who's making art that has something to do with social justice or environmental justice, there might be active suppression to keep that art out of the collective, because it inspires others to maybe notice things about capitalism or the modern world or the systems we live within that they want to change, which would hurt profits, right? So you see how all of this is so entangled. But the fact that our self expression is commodified also puts us in this really difficult position of trying to be authentic, to really honor what we're creating, but also to protect ourselves or to try and really find these what feel like narrow routes toward bringing our self expression forward in a way that it can be properly or rightly celebrated and honored. So then, number three is the capitalism controls and extracts our creative energy. So there are many, everyone has the ability to be creative, to connect with creative energy, which can look like so many things. It can look like the way that you cook, the way that you build or fix things, the way that you tend to your home, the way that you raise your children, not just the way that you do or don't make art. Everyone has this creative capacity just by being alive. We're of course disincentivized to just like indulge in creative exploration for hours at a time, because capitalism needs us producing for capitalism, or needs us spending money for capitalism. That's part of the next number four. But everyone has this ability. And in order to have the money that we need to live inside of capitalism, as prices go up and up and up, and there's more and more things that become privatized or things that we have to pay for. So we need more money to meet our needs because prices are going up, but we're not getting usually paid more money. So the squeeze is happening and has been happening. And the squeeze also happens in the workplace because we're dependent on needing money and paychecks. We take our little creative patooties to a 9 to 5 job where our creative energy will be turned toward the goal of someone else, the profit driven goal of someone else. So I don't want to overly generalize. I know there are professions that really just don't feel super creative. Like, I don't know if the folks who pick up our trash feel like they get to create, like, express themselves creatively other than in their conversations on the truck or things like that. I don't know. So some jobs may not have the need necessarily for creative energy, but others will have that high demand if they have, like, if they're making a lot of products or developing a lot of software, or they need to reach big audiences through their creative marketing. So in all of these ways and others, our creativity is tapped in the workplace to develop those products, to problem solve, to create events, to create marketing, to refine things, to innovate, et cetera, et cetera. So that would look different for different kinds of people in different kinds of jobs. But here in 2025, in America at least, we work a lot. People work a lot. They work when they're not at their jobs. Some people have multiple jobs, so they are actually spreading their creativity across different organizations. Their time becomes more divided, their attention becomes more divided. And so capitalism eats our creativity. Like that's one way that it maintains itself, is by demanding that we're at work a lot and that we um, put our creative energy toward these things. We also feel kind of driven to use our creative energy because if we're creative people, especially, like, we want to feel some satisfaction in using that energy. We want it to feel helpful to other people, whether inside the workplace or outside the workplace. Like when the workplace is interfacing with the public, you may be creative in that way. Um, so it could kind of feel good. And we also know that if we apply our creativity, if we give it generously, we're more likely to get a promotion, to have more visibility, to have a bigger paycheck, to have more money to take care of ourselves and our families. So there's so much incentive around funneling our creative energy, by and large, primarily to something other than ourselves and our own interests. That's how it's, like, really how we have to survive. It's not true of every job. There are jobs with like more creative freedom where people and institutions do like honor and encourage um, individuals to have creative lives when they're not at work. I can't think of one, but if you know one, you can tell me. Um, so when we're giving all this creative energy to the workplace, to the mechanisms of capitalism, we don't feel like we have a lot of energy left to give to our own passions and projects. So by taking the bulk of it from us and leaving us with very little, that keeps us from our creativity. We're tired. We need to rest. We are traumatized by capitalism and by all kinds of other things. And sometimes when we're not at work, we just need to collapse. And when creativity would actually be good for us, we just don't have the spoons to do it. Um, I hate that. I hate that about the way things are. So, number four, then, is the extraction of our labor. This is very similar. Like we have to show up for our jobs, even when we could work at home. Actually, in 2025, the bosses are making people do that commute, waste what would be their free time by driving, make them waste their money by getting gas to make the commute 3, 4, or 5 times a week. Um, the bosses want the bodies in the office so they can surveil them, so they can make sure that the labor is being properly extracted, that everything is hyper efficient, which also, of course, reinforces the idea that your bosses don't trust you, but they will take from you. And not to shit on every boss, they're not all like they're not all like that. I'm just saying that's kind of their job in most situations. So we're tired. And then the more we have to show up and give our labor, the less time we have to do the increasing number of things that we must do to maintain our lives, pay our bills, take children to all their different activities so they can be successful and visible in life. All of that. So when our labor is so exploited, especially given the size of our paychecks these days, we're tired, we're strapped. And if we think and feel and believe that creativity isn't going to make us money, then it's like, why should we do it? Which is number five. We're getting to number five. Capitalism creates this never ending drive for productivity. Capitalism wants more efficiency. It always wants more profits, which also means so extracting as much as possible, but also spending as little as possible, especially on the labor. Labor's big. Like, um, if you have 20 people in your business or even more than that, their salaries, their benefits, you can spend a lot of money on that. So companies try generally to minimize the resources that people get, but maximize what they take from people so that their profits are higher and the people at the top get paid more. So But of course, we're fed this illusion that if we just work hard, if we are successful, if we're dedicated to our work, this is where like America's puritanical work ethic kind of roots start to get entangled in capitalism. If we're not producing so that we can have money or find success, then it's not worth it. It's a waste of time. That's the message we get from this emphasis on productivity being rewarded, or sometimes it's not rewarded. You're just like driven by fear to be more productive. Then we get to a point in life where we don't know what it feels like to be unproductive. This is why like rest as a concept is being like cast about in the zeitgeist, especially through Trisha Hershey's work, that like it's so hard for us to stop. Our nervous systems have been acclimated to this productivity race, and we don't know what to do with ourselves when we're not working. We try to stay busy doing other things. And if we're going to be creative or have creative time, we're going to bring this productivity imperative to the creative work. So a lot of creatives are trying to have like rigid and very disciplined creative practices. And I do think we need discipline and consistency to create our work, but we also need devotion. That's really all we need. We need to like show up enough, and we need to be devoted and caring about the product, but we don't need to manufacture it as quickly as possible with minimal waste. That's not the point of creativity. It's a journey, it's a walk, it's a meandering, it's not a race. So when we bring that productivity into our creative process, once again, we're at war with the nature of creativity, with the nature of our creative selves, and this productivity mindset. So that again creates pain, strife, frustration, angst in the creative process. So then it doesn't even feel that good. So we can stop doing it completely. Um, but we can find another way. I know that's a lot. This is heavy. It's kind of depressing if you really, really look at it. And again, this isn't even like everything. This is kind of surface level. But I think it would be really cool if we could, yes, be properly rewarded for our creative contributions and our labor and our time, and that we had shorter work weeks and we got to do our work at home and also take breaks where we could be creative in the middle of the day or the beginning of the day. And there was more trust in us as contributors to society to produce good things, to do good work, but to also have fulfilling lives that are honoring our creativity and the other things that we care about. Like, what if there wasn't this huge fear in all of us to not be creative? Like, I know people who really struggle to even call themselves a writer or an artist, even though that's what they're doing, because when they were young, it was so dangerous to be such a thing. So they just told themselves, like, oh, I'm not that. So it's hard later to identify as a creative person. But what if that fear was wiped out from most of us, and adults felt comfortable being creative and being creative together, and maybe gathering to do creative things in the parks, in the libraries? I know that happens, but it's not highly funded. It's not highly encouraged. It's kind of like a nice to have. And what if our children got more time to be creative and got to express themselves rather than fit their creativity into all these like boxed up containers or assignments? What if there was more nature around us and we had this free time to be out among the trees and the flowers and the animals and to take in that inspiration and feel how we're not in competition constantly? We're actually in cooperative relationship with the earth and everything that the earth provides. What if it felt abundant to be alive? What if we didn't have to think about money all the time? What would we create? How would we spend our creative time? And I want to encourage you to think about that question. If you did, I know, like, hold on, just the idea of imagining never having to think about money, like, even for a week, like if you like went through a wormhole and ended up in another dimension where you didn't have to think about money for 7 straight days, like even that is hard to imagine. Not because of the interdimensional portal or the wormhole, but because we don't know what that's like, right? If you're a grown up, you've been thinking about money, even if you have a lot of it, even if you have a little of it, or somewhere in between, you are thinking about money, right? Maybe not. I hope not. I hope you are super healthy in that way and you are trusting in that way. This is also work for me as well that I'm doing. But even just imagining, like, what if we didn't have to think about money for 7 days is so hard to conceptualize. But I want to invite you to consider, to imagine if you didn't have to think about money, what would you create? How would you use your creative energy? Like, would you build stuff, fix stuff, gather people, host events, paint things, write things? What would you do? Like, really think about it. I know it can be painful to let our imagination kind of like fantasize in this way because it doesn't feel like it's possible in this capitalistic world. But inside that desire, inside the way that you would answer that question, is some really powerful information that can help you shift some things inside yourself so that creativity, some of those creative dreams and visions can start to actually move and find their way into this world, even with the limitations that we're faced with. It may not look exactly like the fantasy, but it might look incredibly amazing and surprising and astonishing that we could make it in inside all the constraints that we're faced with capitalism. So I want you to think about that. I hope you'll think about that. I hope you'll dream about that. And again, the Creative Wholeness Workshop is going to be a way for you to kind of explore like where some of these different things are really squeezing you the most so that you can engage in a couple of like questions and explorations that might help you shift some of that. Because all of this is internalized. You know, I hope you noticed that in what I'm talking about. It's not only the external reality, but it's also how we take it as truth that this is the way it's got to be. Because I don't think that's true. This is the way it is now, but there's still a lot of space. There's still a lot of magic we can make. Capitalism can't take that away from us, or not yet, I don't think. So let's use it. And part of that involves dreaming and visioning. Okay. Thank you for listening. Thank you for fighting for your creativity. If you listen to this, I know that you're doing that. I know that you have a creative heart and soul, and you have wonderful things to bring into the world, and I'm here to support you. So let me hear from you and take care. Enjoy your creative and magical life.